I gave my neighbor permission to use my shed for a week. When I asked for the key back, she said calmly, "I've decided it belongs to me." She produced a document allegedly signed by me. My lawyer looked it over and said, "This signature was made with your stolen handwriting sample." I ran home to check my files and saw, "My name's Dennis, I'm 48, and I live in a small neighborhood just outside Peoria, Illinois. The kind where people mow their lawns on Sundays and wave at each other from across the street. I've lived here for 15 years. I work for USPS, I'm not married, no kids, and I've always kept to myself. I don't go poking into anyone's business, and I expect the same in return. I've got this shed in my backyard. It's nothing fancy, wooden, about 10 by 12 feet. I built it with my dad in 1999. We poured the foundation, put the walls up, roofed it ourselves. It was our last project before he passed. So yeah, it meant something to me. Inside, I kept my lawn equipment, some old tax records, tools, Christmas lights, just normal stuff. My next-door neighbor is a woman named Lorna. She moved in about 2 years ago. Single. Quiet. Seemed polite enough. We never had long conversations, but she'd say hi when I brought my trash cans out. She once brought me a plate of cookies around Christmas. Nothing weird. Just a neighbor. One day about 6 months ago, she caught me while I was mowing the front yard. She asked if she could use my shed for a week. Said her garage had flooded and she needed a place to store a few boxes while it was getting fixed. I didn't even hesitate. I figured, sure, no big deal. It's a shed. I wasn't using most of it, and a week sounded reasonable. So I gave her the spare key. That was a mistake. A week went by. Then 2. Around the 3rd week, I needed to get in there. I was looking for some old tax documents. I knocked on her door. She opened it like she'd been expecting me. "Hey, just wanted to see if I could get the key back," I said. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "I've decided the shed belongs to me." No laugh. No smile. Just said it flat, like it was fact. I stood there like an idiot. I blinked a few times. "What?" "It's mine now," she said. "I have a document. You signed it." She went back inside and came out holding a folder. Pulled out a single page. It looked like some kind of property transfer form. My name was printed at the top. And at the bottom was my signature. Or what looked like it. My gut dropped. My stomach turned cold. I took the paper without saying a word and went straight to my lawyer, Rob. Rob's been my lawyer for years. Solid guy. Older. Doesn't sugarcoat anything. He sat down, looked over the paper. Didn't say much for a few minutes. Then he looked up and said, "This was made using a handwriting sample. Somebody used your writing. This wasn't signed normally." I was confused. "What do you mean?" "It's not signed with a pen, Dennis. Someone either copied your signature from a real document or traced it. This wasn't done naturally." And that's when it hit me. The shed. Inside, in a locked box, were my old documents, some with my actual signature. I used to keep stuff from work, old receipts, tax forms, all that. I drove back to my house like my hair was on fire. Went to the shed, and sure enough, the lock was different. She'd changed it. I didn't have a key. I didn't want to break it open just yet, so I checked the side where I knew one board was loose. I unscrewed it, crawled inside like a damn animal. My storage boxes were there, but someone had clearly gone through them. Papers out of order, folders open. I couldn't tell what was missing, but I knew something was off. I crawled out and went back to Rob the next day. We filed a police report, but Rob told me not to expect much. "With that signature, she's going to claim you gave it to her. Unless we prove it's fake, she'll drag this out. You'll end up in civil court." So we brought in a handwriting expert. Guy was legit. Wore glasses, had a whole setup in his office. He looked at the fake signature, then at 10 or 12 real samples Rob gave him. He didn't even hesitate. This was copied. It wasn't signed by hand. This was either scanned and printed or traced. We had something now. But Rob said we needed more. Let's catch her doing something else. Let's make this airtight. We hired a private investigator. Guy named Sam. Quiet, fast, efficient. Within a week, Sam had gold. He got footage of Lorna showing the shed to some guy in a pickup truck. She was pointing at it, talking with her hands like she was selling a car. He recorded audio from the fence line. She told the guy, "I'm planning to renovate it. Maybe turn it into a little guest room. It's mine now. My neighbor gave it to me." She sounded confident. Like she owned it. Like none of this was strange. Rob filed a cease and desist. Sent it by mail and served her in person. She lawyered up. Tried to stall. But here's where it gets worse. Sam, our PI, dug deeper. Turns out, Lorna had pulled something similar in Iowa 4 years ago. She went by a slightly different last name, but it was her. Different town, different setup, same scam. She had tried to claim a detached garage on a foreclosed house, forged a signature there too. That case didn't go far, something about missing documents, but it was in the records. Rob smiled when he read that report. Now we bury her. We filed a formal suit. Presented everything. The forged document, expert testimony, the video, even the Iowa incident. Lorna kept her cool in court, but you could tell she was sweating inside. She called me a liar. She said I gave her the shed as a gift. Said I regretted it, and was trying to punish her for being independent. The judge didn't buy a word of it. He ruled in my favor. Ordered her to hand over all keys, banned her from entering my yard, and flagged her for investigation on criminal forgery. I thought it was done. Then I got a letter from her new lawyer. She was suing me for emotional distress. She claimed I caused her public shame. That I humiliated her in front of our neighbors. That I defamed her. Rob read it and said, "Let's end this. We're going scorched earth." And that's when the real payback started. Rob didn't even flinch when he saw the lawsuit for emotional distress. He just said, "She's trying to flip the story. We'll flip it back hard." He got to work immediately. We filed a counterclaim. Not just to dismiss hers, but to charge her with malicious prosecution, harassment, and trespassing. Rob wanted the judge to see the full pattern. Not just a mistake, but a calculated scheme. Meanwhile, Lorna started acting strange. I'd catch her standing at the edge of her yard, just staring at the shed. Not walking, not doing anything. Just standing. One time I was pulling weeds and she was out there for over 20 minutes, arms crossed, face blank. No phone in her hand. Nothing. A few days later, I came home and found my backyard gate wide open. The screws on the shed door lock looked like someone had tried to tamper with it. I checked my cameras. Nothing. That's when I realized my outdoor security cams only covered the front and driveway. I never thought I'd need to monitor the backyard. I went to Best Buy that night and bought a whole new system. Ring cams, motion sensors, floodlights. Installed everything myself. Pointed 2 of them directly at the shed. 3 nights later, 2:47 a.m., motion alert goes off. I check the feed from my phone. There she is. Lorna. In a hoodie. Gloves. Trying to open the shed door with something that looked like a crowbar. I called the cops immediately. By the time they got there, she was gone. But I had the footage. Clear as day. Rob brought that footage to court the next morning and pushed for an emergency hearing. The judge issued a restraining order and added criminal attempted break-in charges. That should have scared her. It didn't. She doubled down. The next week, I got a knock on my door. A reporter. Lorna had gone to a local news station, spinning the story that I was harassing her over a shared structure, and had threatened her with legal intimidation. She even claimed I was obsessed with her. They didn't air the story, thank God. But the damage was already creeping in. Neighbors started whispering. A few stopped waving. One guy who used to walk his dog past my house every night started crossing the street. I felt like the bad guy in my own neighborhood. That's when I made a choice. No more waiting for court. I was going to dig into Lorna's past, myself. I took a few days off work, drove out to the Iowa town where she used to live. Spent a whole day at the county clerk's office, going through public records. I found 3 names she used. 3. Lorna McAdams. Lorna Hayes. Lorna Ackerman. And in each file, there was something similar. She'd lived on properties with detached structures. In one, she filed a small claims suit over ownership of a storage unit. In another, she tried to file for a property title adjustment, claiming the shed on the neighbor's land belonged to her by agreement. This was her pattern. Find lonely men. Act polite. Ask for small favors. Then twist the story into ownership. I made copies of everything. Brought them to Rob. He lit up like it was Christmas. We're not just going after her now, he said. We're going to make sure she can't do this to anyone else ever again. He called a contact in the state attorney's office. Sent everything. Every file, every forged paper, every video. A week later, we got confirmation. They were opening a formal investigation into real estate fraud, forgery, and harassment. And then, just when I thought it couldn't get more insane, her brother showed up at my door. Tall guy. Bald. Looked angry. He knocked loud and fast. I opened the door, ready to slam it if I had to. You need to stop harassing my sister, he said. She's scared of you. I said. She broke into my property and tried to steal from me. I've got it on video. He didn't care. He kept yelling. Said I was ruining her life. Threatened to take care of it himself if I didn't back off. That was a mistake on his part. I had a camera recording above the door. I handed the footage to Rob. He passed it to the DA. Now they were looking into whether Lorna had recruited people to intimidate me, witness tampering. And through all this, she still lived next door. Pretending nothing was wrong. Watering her flowers. Sitting on her porch. Acting like she was just another quiet neighbor. But she had no idea what was coming. Because the more we dug, the more we found. One of her old landlords in Missouri filed a restraining order. Claimed she tried to claim ownership of a pool house. Same tactic. Different city. The state attorney's office started building their case. This was no longer a civil dispute. They were preparing criminal charges. And I was going to make sure I testified. Every lie. Every forged paper. Every creepy stare across the fence line. She wanted a war. She picked the wrong man. A week after her brother showed up at my door, I noticed something weird. There was a black SUV parked across the street. Not one I recognized. Tinted windows. It sat there for hours. No one got out. No one went in. The next day, same thing. Different time. Same SUV. I started taking pictures of the plates. Looked like an out-of-state registration, Indiana. I wasn't sure if it had anything to do with Lorna, but I wasn't going to ignore it. I called Rob. Could be a PI she hired, he said. Some of these people try to build a fake harassment case by catching you doing something they can twist. So I stayed inside. I kept my blinds down. Kept to my routine. Didn't take the bait. 3 days later, I got served again. Another legal document. This time, a formal petition for mediation. Lorna claimed she wanted to settle the matter peacefully and divide rights to the structure. Divide rights to the shed. Rob laughed so hard he had to sit down. She's trying to drag this into mediation so she can wear you down and force a compromise. She knows she's losing the criminal case. We rejected the petition. Rob submitted a formal response that outlined all pending charges, investigations, and the restraining order already in place. But then, something unexpected. I got a call from the Peoria County Property Records Office. "Mr. Madsen?" the clerk said. "We got a strange request today. Someone tried to file a deed amendment on your property. Said you were co-signing your backyard over to a joint owner." I almost dropped the phone. The request had come in via mail. It wasn't signed, but it had my name typed out, and hers. She was trying to record a fake deed transfer. After everything. After court. After the shed was legally ruled mine. She was still trying to steal part of my land. I drove straight to the records office, brought my ID, and filed a fraud alert on my property title. I paid out of pocket for a freeze on any deed changes unless approved in person by me. I was done playing nice. Rob got the new paperwork and updated the DA. That's when we learned something else. Lorna was trying to move. Quietly. She had listed her house with a small, local agent under a different name, Lorna Ackerman. The investigator picked up the listing. There were interior photos online, and guess what was in the background? My shed. She had included it in the listing. In the property description it said, "Additional structure on shared backyard, potential for studio or guest unit." I forwarded it to the DA. They sent it straight to the judge. Rob filed a court order to block the sale. She was trying to skip town before the criminal case hit. And then the final twist landed in my lap. I got a call from a man named Don Richter. Said he used to be married to Lorna. Briefly. Back in Missouri years ago. He found me after seeing her name in a legal blog that reported ongoing fraud cases. He told me Lorna had faked his signature on a lease to take control of a rental cabin he owned before their divorce. He said he didn't fight her back then, he didn't have the money. She walked away with thousands in back rent he never even owed her. He had documents. Emails. Witnesses. I gave his number to Rob. Rob passed it to the DA. Now the DA was pulling records from Missouri, Iowa, Illinois. They were turning her case federal. Multi-state fraud. I don't know how she thought she could get away with it forever. But I know one thing, she never saw this ending coming. And I'm not done yet. It all came to a head exactly 14 months after I gave her the shed key. That morning, I stood outside the Peoria County Courthouse in a suit I hadn't worn since my cousin's funeral. Rob was beside me, calm as ever. Inside that building, Lorna was about to face the consequences of everything she'd done, not just to me, but to at least 3 other men in 3 other states. The courtroom was packed. There were people from the state attorney's office, 2 investigators from Missouri, a paralegal from Iowa, and even a real estate fraud investigator from the federal level. This wasn't a small case anymore. Lorna walked in like she always did. Calm. Dressed sharp. Hair perfect. Not a trace of guilt on her face. But this time, her lies didn't work. The prosecution laid everything out, piece by piece. First, they showed the video of her trying to break into the shed at 2:47 a.m. Then the forged document, the fake ownership transfer signed with a traced version of my signature. Then the court orders she violated, the listing photos that showed my shed in her online real estate ad, and finally the attempted title fraud she filed at the property office, pretending I had co-signed my backyard over to her. Her lawyer stammered through a defense about misunderstandings and mental pressure, but it was garbage. She'd used 3 different names across 3 states. She had a pattern, and now the court had proof. But the biggest punch came from Don Richter, her ex-husband. He flew in from Missouri to testify in person. Calm, polite, and sharp. He showed emails where she threatened to take everything, unless he kept quiet. He showed documents she forged using his old lease agreements. It was the same story as mine. Down to the lies, the fake paperwork, and the manipulation. When the prosecution rested, Lorna finally cracked. She stood up in court and tried to speak, without being asked. "I was just trying to protect myself," she said. "I never meant to hurt anyone." The judge shut it down. "Sit down, Ms. McAdams, or Hayes, or Ackerman, whichever name you plan to use today. Then came sentencing. The judge looked her dead in the eye and said, "You have lied, forged, manipulated, and stolen. Not just once. Repeatedly. Across state lines. In civil and criminal courts. You are not the victim here, you're a serial predator." She was sentenced to 12 years in prison for fraud, forgery, and attempted theft of property, plus additional time added due to interstate violations and contempt of court. 12 years. No parole for the first 5. She broke down crying right there in the courtroom. Not out of guilt, but because she realized her control was gone. Her house was seized by the court. The sale she tried to sneak through was reversed. Her brother, who threatened me, was also charged with intimidation of a witness and slapped with a massive fine and probation. But I wasn't done. I filed a civil suit for damages, emotional distress, legal fees, loss of property use. All of it. We won. The court ordered her to pay over $80,000 in damages. Of course, she didn't have it. But because the judgment was official, I had a lien placed on any money she makes for the next 15 years. Any job, any property, any inheritance, goes through me first. And I made sure her name, every version of it, was flagged in the National Fraud Database. She can't open a credit line, apply for housing, or sign anything legal without it being checked. I also gave all the documentation to a Reddit legal thread. Her story went viral. People started commenting from all over. Some had nearly been tricked by her too. She became a cautionary tale in landlord forums, legal TikTok, and even a real estate fraud blog. That's when I really felt the revenge kick in. Not when I won in court. Not when I got the lien. But when her face and story became a warning. She tried to take a shed. I took her future. As for me, yeah, I still have the shed. Repainted it. Added motion lights. Bolted it down tighter than a bank vault. But I kept one thing exactly how it was, the old door, with the scratch marks where she tried to pry it open. As a reminder. That kindness has limits. And so does patience.